The House That Listened, a lakeside confession. I moved to the lake to hear the truth more clearly. That's what I tell myself now, sitting on the porch the color of weathered bones, with the lantern throwing a circle of soft light against the dusk. Out on the water, a rowboat drifts like an unwatched clock ticking, drifting, returning to the same shore after a wind you didn't see. In the first months after Alice left, that was how my days felt. The wind arriving from nowhere, the boat moving without my hand, the house listening with more patience than any person I knew. You don't notice a quiet house right away. Noise is a habit. It took weeks for the silence to become a voice, and months before I learned to answer it. The first answer was cleaning. Men like me believe in surfaces polished wood, folded towels, grooves of dust erased. I lined the spice jars in alphabetical order and found 3 kinds of paprika we never used. I threw away a dried wedding bouquet that had gone the color of tea leaves. I kept her coat, the caramel one with the belt, on the hook by the door. I told myself it was for practical reasons, in case she came back on a cold night and had nothing to wear. I told myself many practical lies. The neighbors knew, of course. People always know before you're willing to tell them. Mrs. Krensky, who walks past with her long-haired dachshund at sunrise, started greeting me with the careful brightness reserved for widowers and men who have lost a job. I wasn't a widower, and I still had a job. But there is a kind of loss that makes a widow of your routine. Your coffee sits across from you like a stranger. Your bed grows so wide you sleep in the shape of a continent, far from the shore you used to share. You're waiting for the confession. I was too. I waited for it like a letter addressed in a familiar hand, the kind you turn over twice before tearing the edge. I had seen the signs long before the sentence formed. The extra effort on a Tuesday lipstick, the way her phone lived face down on the counter, the small recoil in her shoulders when I said anything in the future tense. When we was a stone thrown at still water, she watched the ripples without looking at me. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Betrayal is more often a slow leak than a tire bursting, a missent text, a change in the shape of absence. I found the message by accident. Isn't that the oldest sentence in marriages like mine? By accident. My thumb brushed open a preview while her phone was in my palm, and we were waiting for the oven to beep. The message didn't say much if you read it as a stranger. Made it to the city, I'll be home late. Same story, followed by a heart she had never used with me. People think the heart is the confession. It isn't. The confession is the phrase, same story. It means there are drafts, practice runs, things you do so often they need a name. That night I burned the roast and told a joke about learning to like charcoal. She laughed and said I was getting better at it, the burning. We ate the softer parts in the middle. Later in bed, I lay next to her like a historian beside an ancient map, tracing old borders I no longer recognized. Once you learn to read, you can't pretend not to see. I read the way she turned her phone to charge with the cord looped like a secret. I read the gap between her good morning and the way she didn't ask about my day. And the next afternoon, I read the miles on the odometer of the car she usually left me, because the other car had already learned a different geography. When it happened for real, it was nothing like the movies. The movies teach you to expect rain, windshield wipers, the staccato of panic. The day I followed her to the lakeside inn 10 minutes from our house, a place where we used to eat anniversary pie, it was all sunlight and lilacs. She parked behind the inn, where the gravel is loose and the air smells like laundry hung out to dry. I parked farther away because I had learned from the deer that if you want to approach a clearing, you must do it without your shadow. I didn't go inside. I watched her step out of the car and into him. The man had the posture of someone used to being expected, and he folded her into his chest with the thoughtless ease of a practiced habit. It would be easy to blame everything on that single moment, the arch of her back, the way her hands sought the back of his neck, the two of them forgetting to check the windows of their reflection. But I had learned enough already to know that betrayal is not a single action. It's a room built slowly, furnished with tiny lies, whose door you pass each night in a hallway you helped construct. I did not kick in the door. I did not shout or throw a bottle into the lake. I went home. I brewed coffee and added the last of her oat milk, which I hated. I walked onto the porch and stared at the boats. the ripples, the indifferent patience of water. I waited for a feeling that would decide my life for me. None came. Instead, I heard the house. It said what all empty places say: you can make a different noise. I will spare you the ugly text messages. They were ugly. The night she came home, the air felt like folded paper, thin and ready to tear. We ate separately. The second night, I asked if she wanted to talk. She said she was tired. The third night, I said the sentence I had been practicing in my car, where I sounded brave and unsentimental. I know. She didn't pretend not to. She was too tired for that, or maybe too honest in the way people become honest once they've practiced lying. She sat down in the chair that had always been a guest at our table, unused, decorative, and she finally used it. She said his name was Daniel. She said it like a word she had already whispered into her pillow 100 times. She said she didn't plan it, as if love were a burglary. She said she felt seen. I didn't tell her I had been staring at her for years. It would have sounded like a complaint when what I meant was awe. Do you want to know if I shouted? I didn't. I asked for facts. The facts were small: lunches, walks, an overnight that became a pattern. The facts were big. I had not been listening when she said she felt lonely, because I had been busy building a life that would be safe for us. I had thought safety was a fence and a mortgage and a pantry. She had been asking for a window. He gave her a window. I gave her cupboards full of the same cereal. The problem with facts is that they never tell you what to do with them. After she slept in the guest room, and after her toothbrush became a traveler, I turned to the only judge who hadn't left me: the lake. People talk to God, to therapists, to their mothers. I talked to water. What am I supposed to do? I asked. The lake did what it always does. It offered back my own voice, softened by distance, asking whether I wanted to keep living the way I had been living, just because I knew how to. Days folded into each other. I went to work. I returned calls. I learned the grocery store without her. And then I did the one thing she had been asking, without asking for years. I told the truth, not about her, about me. Before Daniel, I said one night, you were already leaving. I was too. I left into my lists. You left into your quiet. We both kept going. She cried then, but not the dramatic kind, not the kind that requires a performance, the kind that learns your face and leaves salt in the corners of your mouth. She said she didn't want to be cruel. I said she had already been kind for too long. We were both right. When we finally asked the next question, what now? We sat in the truth like you sit in a cold lake up to your chest. Your breath goes short. You wait for your body to understand new information. Slowly it does. We separated without theatrics. She took the car that knew the city. I kept the house that knew my name. We split the library the way you divide a country by rivers, mountains, old grudges. She took the poetry. I let her. I kept the cookbooks, as if I had always planned to become the kind of man who reads recipes without anyone to feed. If the story ended there, you'd call it sad and tidy. A marriage closed with a zipper, a lake still and blank, a man learning to scrub his pans. But that would not be true. Life resists tidy. Even endings grow wild when you stop mowing them. I kept seeing Daniel. Not literally. I never ran into him at the store or at the inn with its lilac air. But he showed up in the way I reached for my phone at night, looking for proof that I was still missing something. He arrived when I almost texted her, "Did you make it home?" A sentence with no place to land anymore. He haunted my shoulders, which learned the posture of a man who doesn't want to take up too much space in a room only he occupies. So I built something that made room for me to return. I started with the dock. It had a tilt, a tired slant that taught you to walk like a man stepping off a train. I read a forum, bought tools, laid out boards. The instructions were written in the kind of confident English that assumes fathers taught you names for screws. Mine taught me how to fix an engine with a hammer and prayer. I learned the difference between 8 and 10 in my palm and how cedar listens when you lean your weight into it. The dock grew straight under my knees. The lake said nothing, but its silence was approving. By the time I sunk the last post, the rowboat tied to the new cleat looked less like a drifting clock and more like a promise you make to your own mouth. I will say this and I will mean it. I didn't expect what came next. People. Solitude is a room you rent. Community is the neighbor who knocks and says the pipe under your sink is singing the wrong song. On a Saturday morning while I was learning to make pancakes without burning the kitchen, a teenager from 2 houses down, Maya, with chipped blue nail polish, asked if she could fish off the new dock. I said yes on the condition that she teach me how to bait a hook without hating the worm. She said nobody likes it, and then showed me gently how to do it anyway. After that, the house stopped listening only to me. I began hosting small things that make noise but never chaos. A coffee on the porch with Mr. Tran, who told me his wife's roses liked eggshells, and a book club I didn't understand that met my living room because I had the biggest rug, and a Sunday morning where I showed Maya how to flip pancakes with a confidence I was pretending to own. The house learned new footsteps. I learned to leave the door open when the air was good. Eventually, these words are easy and hard at once. Alice asked to come by. She texted first. Time had already begun its underwater work, rounding the edges of our sharpest hours. I left a scarf, she said. Can I pick it up? It was summer by then, and the lake had put its green dress on. I answered yes and vacuumed the rug, as if the carpet could testify for me. She stood in the doorway, like a photograph of the woman I knew with light edited in. We made tea. She looked at the new dock and said it was beautiful. I said thank you, because it was, and because she didn't owe me that kindness. There are people who will tell you forgiveness happens like an altar call. Step forward and you are saved. They are not entirely wrong, but they forget that even saved people still must go home and wash the dishes. Our forgiveness was domestic, humble. We did not bless each other with speeches. She said she was sorry. I told her I had believed we would last forever, and that forever should be prosecuted for false advertising. We stood in the kitchen of a house that had learned a new language, and we pronounced each other free. Are you happy? I asked because the part of me that once kept score had to spend the last of its coins. I'm trying, she said. I feel more honest. I don't know if that's the same thing. Sometimes it is, I said. Then we hugged the kind of awkward embrace that remembers your body's old map and respects the new borders. She left the scarf behind on purpose, I think. I found it later draped over the porch rail, answering the wind. That should be the final chapter, right? A man learns, a woman leaves, the lake listens. But life puts epilogues in your pocket without asking if you want them. Mine arrived on an evening in late September, when the sky decided to push all its colors through the trees at once. I took the rowboat out farther than I had before. The oars counted my breathing. The water kept its own book of hours. Far from shore, the house became a toy, like something a boy would build for school. The dock, plumb and true, pointed inland like an arrow. I stopped rowing. It is a particular bravery to stop doing the thing that makes you feel useful. I let the boat drift. The lake took me to a patch where the water deepened to ink. The air thinned into quiet that wasn't empty. It was attentive. I spoke because the habit of the past year had taught me that saying a thing out loud gives it laws. I forgive you, I said to the woman who was no longer my wife. The water moved like a shoulder under a blanket. And I forgive me, I added, to the man who had made a fence and called it love, who had been so busy keeping predators out, he forgot to leave a gate open for the person he was protecting. I rowed back with arms that felt like they belonged to somebody prepared to carry his own weight. On the shore under the cottonwoods, a shape waved. It was Maya, carrying a thermos and wearing the hoodie of a school I never attended. I caught nothing, she said, pointing to the lake as if it had cheated her. You caught the evening, I said. Some days that's better. We sat on the edge of the dock, feet above the water like 2 commas in a sentence we hadn't finished writing. She told me about a college she hoped to attend, about her mother's second job, about the way the lake could keep a secret if you told it the right way. I listened, and in listening I found the exact size of the life I could hold now. It was not smaller than the life I had before. It was simply a different shape. Later, when the mosquitoes made their case, and the porch light stitched a little door through the dusk, I went inside. The house, generous as ever, had let the day breathe through it. I poured a drink water mostly and set a single plate on the table. I ate without counting what was missing. When I washed the dish, I noticed my reflection in the window. A man my age, no longer surprised by his own face. I looked beyond to the lake, black as a future and bright as a promise at the same time. I could tell you that I met someone new, and in a way that would be true. But the first person I met, the one worth mentioning in the record, was myself. The discovery was not cinematic, it was domestic. In the rhythm of a broom against the floorboards, in the knot that holds a boat to a cleat, in the decision to buy fresh basil because I wanted the kitchen to smell like something alive. When winter came, the lake made a pain of itself. People walked carefully between each other's yards like characters in a story who had learned the trick of a new world. I taught Maya to skate in wobbly circles. Mr. Tran brought P.O. that made my windows sweat. The book club chose a murder mystery and then talked for 2 hours about hope. On a night when the moon stayed up late, I found the caramel coat still hanging by the door. I put it in a box with the scarf and drove it to the inn with the lilac air, which was closed for the season but still held the memory of pies and the soft grammar of forgiveness. I left the box with a note. For a woman who will need to be warm on a night, she chooses to be honest. The note was not meant for Alice, it was meant for anyone. Perhaps that means it was meant for me. Sometimes I stand on the porch and think of the sentence that started everything. I moved to the lake to hear the truth more clearly. The truth is that love is not a fence or a pantry. It is a window and a door, and the courage to sit in a quiet room while someone else tries to find the words they owe themselves. It is also pancakes that you flip badly until one day you don't. You want to know the ending? Here it is. I keep the house. I keep the dock. I keep the boat and the habit of asking the lake questions that sound like prayers. Alice visits twice a year to pick up mail that still finds her here, and we trade the headlines of our separate lives. She is well. I am well. We do not say we are happy because we have learned that happiness is a weather, and weather changes, and that's not a failure of the sky. One evening in spring, months after the ice shrugged itself into water again, I watched the rowboat come loose. A sloppy, not my own carelessness. The boat drifted, slow and sure, into the middle where the lake keeps its secrets. For a minute I panicked. The old, small panic that believes possession is safety. Then I sat down on the dock and waited. The wind turned, a polite guest, and brought the boat back to me as if it had only wanted to remind me of something I already knew. You can let go and still have a way home. I tied a better knot. I went inside. The house listened. I did not need it to answer anymore.